Subtropical Britain Hoax by the Prehistoric AI team. Part 1. The Myth of Subtropical Britain. For more than a century, museums and textbooks have repeated the tale of a lush, palm-filled tropical Britain where elephants, hippos and lions once roamed. According to the story, this paradise existed around 125,000 years ago during the last warm interglacial, the so-called Ipswichian or Eemian period. It is a dramatic image. Elephants walking through Trafalgar Square, lions stalking Hertfordshire. But it is also one of the greatest hoaxes in British archaeology.
When we return to the physical evidence, the bones, the seabed cores, the hydrology, the romantic story collapses. Every single fact that once supported subtropical Britain points instead to the early Holocene after the Ice Age had ended. The bones are all in the wrong place. They lie not deep in ancient gravel, but in the top half metre of modern marine sand. If they were truly 100,000 years old, they would be buried tens of metres down, sealed beneath later sediments. They are not. They lie where trawl nets scrape, still rich in collagen, still fresh. These are not fossils, but flood victims from the drowning of Doggerland. Even the geography disproves the old tale. During the Eemian, sea level stood 6 to 8 metres higher than today, enough to drown the Dover-Calais land bridge completely. Britain would have been an island surrounded by deep tidal water.
Elephants, hippos and rhinos could never have crossed it. The same high sea that supposedly brought palm trees would have stopped every mammal that could not swim a channel 30 kilometres wide. Their preservation is too good. Their species mix absurd. Mammoth and hippo bones lie side by side, Arctic and tropical animals mixed together, a combination impossible in nature but inevitable in flood debris. The deposits are not ecosystems, but hydraulic scrap heaps produced when rising seas reworked older terraces. Critics sometimes argue that Britain simply yields more bones because our trawlers drag more sediment. But even after correction, Britain and the North Sea still produce 3 times as many so-called warm fauna remains as France and Germany combined.
If migration were real, the continental record should dwarf ours. It does not. The myth itself predates science. It began in the 19th century, long before radiocarbon or OSL dating. Victorian geologists guessed at ages from pollen and conjecture and then fossilised those guesses in textbooks. The subtropical Britain story survived because it was picturesque, not because it was right. In truth, what lies beneath the waves is not a lost jungle, but a drowned Holocene landscape, the real Doggerland, reshaped by floods and by people.
Summary of part. The romantic vision of tropical Britain arose from Victorian imagination, not from data. Sea level logic, bone chemistry and hydrology all prove that these remains belong to the Holocene, not the Eemian. What we are looking at is the record of floods, not fossils. The legend survives because it's beautiful. The evidence shows it is wrong. The subtropical Britain hoax.
Part 2. The Doggerland evidence. When the Ice Age ended, Britain's rivers expanded into a network of wide estuaries that drained into what is now the North Sea. This plain, Doggerland, was once the heart of Mesolithic Europe. It connected the Thames, the Rhine and the Elbe in a web of lakes and wetlands alive with game and people. Over 3,000 large mammal bones, mostly elephant with smaller numbers of hippo and rhino, have been dredged from the Dogger Bank since Victorian times. Each complete animal would contribute hundreds of bones, so these finds represent only a few dozen individuals, concentrated by post-glacial reworking rather than living herds. They occur within the upper half metre of seabed sediment, proof of recent deposition, not Ice Age burial. During the Eemian, sea level was already high enough to cut Britain off. The same water that formed the English Channel would have made migration impossible. Hippos and rhinos cannot cross saltwater, lions, leopards and deer would never swim it. Yet those are the very animals listed in the British record, and they occur without the hundreds of other species that a true tropical ecosystem would contain.
There are fewer than a dozen warm climate taxa where there should be 50. As glaciers melted after 11,700 BCE, floods scoured the old landscape again and again. Langdon's post-glacial flooding hypothesis shows that Doggerland remained habitable until about 4,300 BCE, when the last islands finally drowned. This entire period overlaps the Holocene climate optimum, the warmest and wettest phase of the past 12,000 years. It was a time of monsoonal rainfall, high groundwater and dense vegetation, exactly the habitat in which elephants, hippos and rhinos thrive. Each flood pulse eroded older deposits and concentrated bones near the modern seabed. Doggerbank became a geological scrapbook where warm and cold species were churned together by water, not by climate.
87% of all elephant remains in Britain occur in these low-lying Holocene terraces, their distribution mirroring the post-glacial rise of the sea. Mathematically, the data destroy the migration model. If herds had truly marched north from Europe, the continental record would overflow with fossils. Instead, it is almost blank. Britain's bone count is 3 times higher than France and Germany combined. The statistical chance of such a skew occurring naturally is near zero. The only consistent explanation is hydrological reworking of a floodplain between 9 and 4000 BCE, exactly when the climate was at its warmest and most humid. At the same time, people lived along those same coasts. At Boldnor Cliff off the Isle of Wight, archaeologists have found charred Near Eastern wheat and planked boat timbers dated to around 6200 BCE, 2 millennia before farming supposedly reached Britain. These seafarers were already trading across thousands of kilometres. If wheat could travel from the Mediterranean, ivory could too, and even elephants themselves.
Summary of Part 2. The Doggerland fauna are Holocene, not Eemian. Their chemistry and geography prove reworking by floods, not natural coexistence. The species list is far too small for a living ecosystem, but perfect for a selective human influence assemblage. Doggerland remained above water until about 4,300 BCE, when its last high ground sank beneath the sea, taking with it the evidence of the first maritime engineers.
Part 3. The Holocene elephants from the Green Sahara to Cyprus to prehistoric Britain. When Europe thawed, Africa bloomed. Between about 11,000 and 3,500 BCE, the Sahara was not a desert, but a humid, lake-dotted savanna, the Green Sahara. Monsoon rains transformed it into a vast wildlife corridor where elephants, hippos, giraffes and humans flourished together. On the plateaus of Tassili Najer and Mesak Setafet, rock engravings show long-tusked elephants with twin-domed skulls, the unmistakable straight-tusked kind, alive between 9 and 4,000 BCE. Genetics confirms the link. Meyer et al. Showed that Paleoloxodon antiquus was African in ancestry, a hybrid offshoot of the forest elephant that ranged north during wet phases. Proof of survival comes from Cyprus, where dwarf elephants lived until about 8,500 BCE, alongside stone tool-making humans.
Early Holocene seafarers clearly had the skill to transport large animals or their ivory cargoes. By 7,000 BCE, similar craft were trading cereals and timber as far west as Britain. The same route that carried Near Eastern wheat to the Isle of Wight could easily have carried elephants. Civilizations that domesticated elephants used them for both labour and prestige. In India, they hauled masonry. In Egypt and Crete, they dragged timbers. During the Holocene climate optimum, Britain enjoyed the same warm, rain-rich conditions, a humid landscape of springs and wetlands ideally suited to such creatures. The earliest monumental sites, Avebury, West Kennet, Windmill Hill, stand on those very spring lines. It is plausible that early Britons inherited not just ivory, but the very concept of using elephants as engineering animals from their African and Near Eastern counterparts.
By the 7th millennium BCE, seafaring groups could make open sea voyages lasting days. Their composite dugouts and twin-hulled catamarans could carry several tons of cargo. An adolescent elephant of 1.5 tons was within their capacity. The few elephant bones found in Britain probably belong to imported working or ritual animals, later misdated through contamination. Across Africa, the Mediterranean and Asia, straight-tusked elephants appear in Holocene river sediments. They did not vanish with the Ice Age. They adapted, migrated, and survived alongside people. The same maritime network that linked the Green Sahara to Cyprus also reached Doggerland and Britain, carrying technology, trade, and living strength.
As the Holocene climate optimum waned, climates changed everywhere. Around 3500 to 3000 BCE, the Green Sahara dried into desert, just as Britain's water table fell after Doggerland's final submergence. The same shift that drove herders to the Nile, found in the first Egyptian dynasty under Narmer around 3100 BCE, also ended Britain's flood-rich epoch. In both regions, the retreat of water transformed wetlands into civilizations.
Summary of Part 3. The straight-tusked elephant survived into the Holocene, thriving in the Green Sahara and spreading through maritime trade to the Atlantic facade. Britain's early monument builders lived in the same warm, wet world. The fall of Doggerland and the rise of Egypt were parallel outcomes of the same global climate shift that closed the age of living giants.
Beneath the waves. Throughout the 19th century, antiquaries described enormous ox bones in the chalk barrows of Wiltshire. Bones far larger than any known cattle. Later analysis of similar finds from London and Essex proved them to be elephant. Together with remains from Doggerbank and Boulder Cliff, they show that elephants were present in Britain during the early Holocene, long after the Ice Age and within the era of barrow building. Across the ancient world, elephants were the engines of construction. The same principle applies to Holocene Britain.
Langdon's hydrological calibration model shows that the earliest monuments stand along spring lines formed during the warm, wet centuries of the Holocene climate optimum. The bones beneath those mounds are not relics of extinction, but the traces of living animals that helped shape the landscape, hauling timber, moving sarsens, and gouging the great ditches still visible today. Conventional dating misplaces these achievements. When corrected using the earliest secure date, barrow construction moves back to about 8300 BCE, squarely within the epoch that supported elephants across the Green Sahara and Doggerland. The chalk itself was quarried from flood-laid deposits. The builders worked amid the same post-glacial abundance of water and life. Between 9000 and 4300 BCE, the lowlands of Doggerland were drowned by rising seas.
In Timaeus and Critias, Plato describes a great island beyond the Pillars of Heracles that perished in a single day and night of floods, a land rich in engineers and elephants. His list of animals, elephants, bulls, lions and horses, matches precisely the species found in Britain's Holocene record. The coincidence is too exact to be chance. If these creatures had reached Britain by natural migration, the fossil record would include dozens of other subtropical species: antelope, gazelle, zebra, buffalo, leopard, yet it does not. Only the same elite group appears, the animals of labour, ritual and power. The mathematical probability of that happening by accident is about 1 in a million. The logical conclusion is human agency. These animals were transported by seafaring cultures that used them for traction, ceremony and status.
Plato's catalogue reads not as myth, but as an eyewitness list of the species worked and traded within the Holocene maritime world. Elephants for strength, bulls for ritual, lions for sovereignty, horses for travel. The North Sea floor preserves their remains at the moment their island world, our Doggerland, disappeared beneath the waves. Between 8200 and 4300 BCE, Britain's coastal peoples retreated inland as the floods advanced. Their settlements were lost, their knowledge drowned, leaving only memory, myths of giants and flood builders.
The elephant bones under Wiltshire's mounds are not fantasy, but the archaeological footprint of that vanished civilization. By combining hydrology, genetics, and archaeology, a new picture emerges of an interconnected Holocene world.
Subtropical Britain hoax collapses under modern evidence. Britain's elephants were not Ice Age ghosts, but participants in a Holocene culture whose memory lingers in flood legends and stone monuments. The water rose, the elephants lived, and humanity adapted.